we head into Thanksgiving, I'm already thinking about food. I love Thanksgiving. Having grown up a preacher's kid and a grandkid of a preacher, Christmas was always a work day. So for me, Thanksgiving in our family was always the big holiday where we would get together and have fun and connect. Now, I don't know about you, but one of the weird things that we would do around Thanksgiving is we would play the wishbone game. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where you take that bone in the sternum that you get after you've eaten the turkey or the chicken, and you, as siblings, each take one side of that bone and you pull, and whoever has the largest side once the bone breaks is the one who wins. Now, this week as I was thinking about food and thinking about Thanksgiving, I was researching the Wishbone, and I came across a new app. It's not really that new, but it's called the Wishbone app. Now, Wishbone as an app for your home is for you to constantly compare social content. So every morning you receive a new daily dozen, which is a series of 12 pop culture-based questions with 2 distinct choices. You can choose this or this. And if you complete all 12, then you get a nightly dozen too. This has been my rabbit hole for the last few weeks. You pick a side and then you can see how everyone else using the app voted. It's quick and it's fun, and it's a great brain play for the start of every morning, giving us a little bit of knowledge about what's buzzing around the world. It covers humor and fashion and celebrities and sports and music and pretty much anything that you might want to talk about or even not talk about. So I thought maybe we could play some at-home wishbone this morning. In your home, as you're watching, I want you to vote and see what wins for Thanksgiving. Turkey or ham? Mashed potatoes or baked potatoes? Sweet potato casserole or potato casserole? Green beans or asparagus? Now here's a contentious one. Dressing or stuffing? What about dessert? Pecan pie or pumpkin pie? See, if you were wondering what to make for Thanksgiving, now you know exactly what the people around you want for Thanksgiving. Now, all playing aside, this got me thinking. We live in a wishbone society where we're all forced, it seems, to choose this or that. Where every moment of our life, we're pitting one thing against another. We've been conditioned to think that somehow forming binaries is better. We've always got to figure out who will get the bigger side of the wishbone. So it made me start thinking about what would Paul say to the wishbone church in America today? Instead of living a life of wishbone, where we're always looking for a winner and a loser, an insider and an outsider, where we're pulling each other apart, I believe this text in the 2nd chapter of Philippians, Paul would encourage us to live a life of and. And is the generous way of life. And opens up closed doors. And changes everything. And is a bridge. And is turkey and ham and prime rib. And is grace-filled and growth-minded and gratitude-centered. So how do we as a people of faith live a life of and? Paul tells us that to live a life of and, we must be humble. That we have to put others before ourselves. The Message translation says it beautifully. It says, agree with each other. Love each other. Be deep-spirited friends. Don't push your way up to the front. Don't sweet-talk your way to the top. Put yourself aside and help others get ahead. Don't be obsessed with getting your own advantage. Forget yourself long enough to lend a helping hand. The second thing that Paul would tell us in the midst of being and people is first, be humble, but second, stand courageous in offering the good news. Now, the good news often looks different than what we might think. This weekend, I watched a movie documentary called Emmanuel. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to watch it today with your family. Talk about standing courageous. You might remember the story. On June 17th, a white supremacist walks into a Bible study at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church, and he guns down 9 African Americans. Yet somehow, through the midst of this documentary, this church, these people choose to forgive. It's almost incomprehensible. This community chooses to speak forgiveness instead of hate, even when what brought destruction to them was the hate of someone against them simply for the color of their skin. Now, this doesn't mean that white supremacists shouldn't be held accountable. In fact, even in forgiving him, they still wanted accountability. Yet they recognize that harboring their own hate just gives him power. And as MLK says, hate only begets hate. Only love can defeat hate. So we have to be bold with our sharing of the good news. And then Paul tells us that we have to create community. Literally, community meaning with unity. Part of creating community means we bring folks together. How do we build love even when we disagree? How do we build community when we see the world differently? How do we hold our faith even when we understand that intimate thing differently? We must make room for and. We must embody the way of and, the generous way that makes room for those that differ from us. Now, does this mean that you have to check your convictions at the door? No way. Hold fast to your convictions. Hold fast to the path that God has laid in your heart, but be humble enough not to single story those that believe and are convicted differently than you. We must be humble enough to look for and see the other stories that make the complex people that we actually are. Because I'm not my political party. And I'm not just one aspect of my faith belief. And neither are you. See, the beauty of unity is found in our complexity, not in our simplicity. Unity where everyone looks and acts the same is easy, and nobody wants to be a part of that. But unity where we actually come together in our difference is where the power is. Unity through our diversity. Unity through difference, not in spite of it. This type of unity screams boldly to the world what the love of Christ really looks like. This kind of and unity is the good news our world is in desperate need to hear and to feel and experience. In fact, John tells us that the world will actually know who God is by how we love each other. Here's the promise that Paul reminds us at the end of chapter 2. Do everything readily and cheerfully, not bickering, no second guessing. Go out into the world uncorrupted, a breath of fresh air in the squalid and polluted society, providing people with a glimpse of good living of the living God. Carry the light-giving message into the night in a world that says we must polarize one another. That we can't be in a meaningful relationship with those with which we differ. That we must see the world through binary lenses. This is all squalid air that the church and the world have held in common for far too long. Paul challenges us to be a people of and. to choosing a path of humility, to being courageous and offering good news, which will look differently than what we think and will make us radically uncomfortable, to create community that embraces unity through its diversity, not its singularity. Now, each of these things is a breath of fresh air in a world that's longing to breathe in. Each of these are good news in a bad news world. So may we become a church and a people of and.